we did cope. We just understood this is what we have to do. But you're right, our relationship was on the back burner, and we kind of realized that that's where it has to be at this point in time.
I remember when I would come home from being out somewhere and I would turn onto my street, the tension across the back of my shoulders was horrendous.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean, and this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Check us out online at couplessynergy.com and be sure to subscribe to our podcast or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couples Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experiences with working with thousands of couples for over 15 years.
You know, every day we get to hear intimate details about a couple's celebrations, disappointments, and everyday challenges. We've often wished these stories were shared because we know we are more similar than different. And so we've created not only an avenue where you can hear people talk about their intimate lives, but an atmosphere where people come over to our home pub, pour a drink, and share their stories.
People like today's guests, Len and Millie. How are you guys?
Doing well, thanks, Ray.
Thank you very much for coming down and doing the podcast with us. We really appreciate you guys joining us.
Our pleasure.
So we have a great topic today. I think the topic is, it was caregiving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have some really great stories around that. Before we get into that, if you guys can tell us a little bit about yourselves and how long you guys been together.
I'm Millie, and Len and I have been married for 35 years in September.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we met at work, and we were supposed to be doing a carpool with a bunch of people, and the bunch of people ended up disappearing, and then it was just Len and I, and we would just sit and talk on those long winter nights, and we ended up having dinners, and one thing led to another, and 35 years later, here we are.
All right. And Len?
Again, Millie and I met at Curtis Candy, and first we worked right by Wrigley Field, just off of Addison and Broadway, and then they shipped us out to Bensonville. That's when we started having the long carpools, and I must say I was dating somebody at the time, but Millie and I were having these long rides and fell in love, and that started our relationship. So
You guys are ready to dive right into the relationship story. How old are you, Len?
87. I'm 67.
Wow. I was like, you look great for 87.
67. Married in 83. I'm sorry.
67. And what do you do for a living?
Retired since January 11th.
Great.
But
2 weeks ago,
met
right?
Millie at Curtis Candy. Prior to that, Alberto Culver Company for 5 years. Then 27 years on the trading floor of the CME with my three brothers. And then after that, St. Emily Parish for 7 years.
Okay, awesome. And Millie, you were a dental
I was a
assistant?
dental assistant. That was my last job for 14 years. And when Len and I met at Curtis Candy, I worked there for 12 years. And then I got pregnant, and we decided that I was going to stay home and take care of our daughter, Megan. And then my mom and dad moved in with us, and I kind of ended up taking care of them as well. So, and here we are.
And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are in this carpool.
Yes.
Who asks who out?
It just kind of happened, Jen.
Yeah, it did kind of happen. Yes. It just,
So you guys did a sliding versus
it
deciding.
evolved. Yes.
Got it.
It evolved. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one day on the way to work, he gave me a kiss, and I slammed into the car in front of me.
Did you really?
You got into a car accident? Mm-hmm. Wow.
I told him to keep his hands to himself.
Well, honey, you should have put it in park. But yes.
Where'd you guys go on your first date?
Cass and Lou's, maybe?
Cass and Lou's restaurant, which is no longer in the city on Irving Park.
It
but
was part
a
of our route, getting
was a
from
very
Bensonville back to Montrose and
nice
Clarendon.
Italian restaurant,
Italian.
which he loves. So
Okay.
that's where we used to go.
What was it about the other person that you fell in love with?
Great question.
Well,
Just
He claimed that it was when I was bending over the file cabinet. That he was, that's what he said. But no, he was just the nicest man, and he was so cute. And I really liked him. He was a gentle soul.
So I used to give her things to file.
Whether you needed them filed or not.
Right. Right. But I just, she just attracted me for, her beauty and for who she was. And, it just was a natural attraction that I, had. So,
How long did you guys date? Not long.
Not long.
Whispers.
Year and a half.
Year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Was there a reason why it was only a year and a half? Or?
He was very anxious to get married.
How old were you guys when you started dating?
Late 20s.
30 for me.
Okay. And how long into the relationship did you know you were a couple? And how did you know?
When he broke up with the other girlfriend.
That's a good sign.
Yeah. But she sat me down on the steps to her parents' apartment and said, "Look, you have to make a decision here, or I'm out of here."
Yeah. You got to pick one.
Yeah, right. So,
What was that moment like for you?
well, I mean, she she forced me to decide, and I had to, pray about it, think about it, said, "Okay, this is the direction I want to go," and that was it. So, none of that stuff is pleasant,
Right.
So,
And who said I love you first?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't remember.
it's too many years.
Yeah.
But whoever said it first meant it, and whoever said it second meant it. So.
Good cover.
See.
And tell us about your engagement.
Our engagement.
That was at Cast and Lose also, and I got you the engagement ring. Remember, we had dinner.
So how you already got the ring? Did you ask her family, or was there any things for you guys?
I don't recall him asking my parents.
No, but I don't think I did. But I was a big hit since Millie's mom only spoke Spanish, and I had rudimentary Spanish.
Oh.
And so, I mean, she gave me extra salad, extra, things at dinner time and everything. So
She was
very
impressed because you were
She was
trying.
very happy.
Yeah.
She was very happy.
She was very happy.
So I don't think I asked your dad. I just asked you first, I think. Mm-hmm.
And they were, of course, delighted. They loved him. Mom said he would look great in a tux, so we just went with it. Yeah.
Now, your mother's ethnic background is
We are from Cuba.
from Cuba. Okay.
Yes, we came over in 1962.
So you're 100%?
I'm 100%.
Oh, okay.
You were born there.
I was born there.
Okay.
I was 6. My brother was 3. My mom was in her 30s, and my dad was in his 40s. So
Wow.
it was a long time ago.
So did you know that night he was going to propose?
No.
What was it like for you?
Well, it was kind of funny. It's kind of a private thing that happened there, but it was wonderful because he is such a good guy, and I for the longest time I just never thought that I would find the right person, and then all of a sudden, when you least expect it, which is what your parents always tell you, he showed up, and he was just awesome. So, and I did love him.
That's
I
great.
still do.
Lucky me.
Lucky you.
How long were you guys engaged?
A year.
Yeah, a year. Mm-hmm.
So you got engaged like 6 months into the relationship. Okay.
We got engaged awfully fast. Yes, it kind of made my head spin.
Did it seem like this relationship was different from other people you may have dated? Like, did you
Yes.
have a knowing?
Yeah, it did seem different. Because of who you are, Mill, it just seemed different. Like, this is the right person for me. Not that the other people were bad or untrustworthy or anything like that. It's just,
You just
yeah.
feel comfortable. You can be yourself with the person that's going to be your soulmate, I think. And we've always felt comfortable with each other. So,
Did your families have any concerns about the length of the relationship? That being only a year and a half?
No.
no, my parents didn't have any concern about that. They really didn't like the guy that I had dated previously, so I think they were like, yay.
Well,
How was it when your families met?
Well, my mom didn't speak English, even though she tried for many years to learn. It just didn't seep in. Dad is more of a quiet guy, so it was a little uncomfortable. But in the end, his mom and dad, especially his mom, was a delightful person. When she walked into the room, she just made you feel so welcome. So I think that she broke the ice with the gathering of the parents. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So did you guys live together before you got married?
No.
No.
This is an old timer story where
Right.
Millie lived with her
Right.
mom and dad in her apartment until she got married. But
So then, did you guys purchase a place together after you
did.
id married?
Well, we
Like, how did
rented.
that go about? Like,
okay, so I had a condo in Rogers Park.
Okay.
But it was a studio, and it was tiny, and I wanted us to live there after we were married. And my oldest brother, especially, was saying, "Look, that's too small for you to get started out. Just rent it or sell it, and get an apartment." So we got an apartment in Jefferson Park. I probably had that place for 6 or 8 years after we were married, and I finally sold it. But then we had enough money saved to move to Mount Prospect, and that was our first home. Little story about our daughter, who again was born in '84. We were married in '83. So in '87 we moved to Mount Prospect, and she was had just turned 4. And when we opened up the sliding patio door to the back of the house, she said, "Ooh, a park." So I'll never forget that. So she was used to living in an apartment. That was just great to see the backyard and
Yeah.
describe it that way. So
We're still
That's
there.
cool.
That's wonderful. Wow. And so you guys have one daughter?
one daughter.
One daughter.
One daughter.
She's 35 in August.
35. Wonderful. So let's ask you a question about conflict, right, and stress. Like, how do you guys manage conflict and stress within your relationship, your marriage?
Great question.
And he had a lot of stress working down at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and there were certain times of the year where he was really stressed. I just left him alone because he just needed his space.
Mm-hmm.
But so did Millie, taking care of her mom and dad. And again, her mother suffered from mental illness, and there were times when it was very, very difficult for her to take care of her mom. And quite often she was in hospitals for treatments and shock therapy and things like that. It was not easy. So how do we handle it? Back to the question. I think we just understood what each of us were going through and had respect for that. And so tried to give each other space when needed.
And what would happen if you guys disagreed about something? How did
We'd
you
argue.
resolve that?
Sure, we'd argue.
Okay.
And,
I usually would do this silent treatment. That's how
oh my gosh, I forgot about the silent treatment.
Guilty.
And sometimes they would go on for a week.
I
my
just-
gosh.
I couldn't face him because I was too angry, so I just felt that walking away and just regrouping was my way of dealing. But we really should probably, in retrospect, have talked to each other about it. But I just didn't grow up that way.
When the silent treatment was over, did you talk about it then, or did you just
Yes.
sort of
Yes,
resolve it within yourself?
I had to resolve it for myself, and then I had to gather my thoughts on how I was going to approach him about I didn't like what happened here. We need to handle this differently. And then we were able to talk. He was less likely to fly off the handle than me.
Okay.
So sometimes.
And what was that silent treatment time like for you?
It was tough.
Yeah.
You come home from work, and again, all of us have stresses at work, and come home, and then the dinner plate would come on the table without a word, and she wouldn't set it on the table. She would plop it down, and I remember that vividly. And it's like, oh gosh, can we? But I knew better than to even try to start a conversation because she did not want to talk. So
She needed that time.
She needed that time,
That
a few
temper.
days or a week, and then eventually we were able to talk again.
It's interesting. One of the things that men are most afraid of from women is that they'll abandon them or they'll reject them, right? And so, I kind of do the silent thing also.
You do?
And, I didn't realize how hard that was on him.
And scary.
Yeah, and really scary. And and I think for the same reasons you're doing it, you're trying to figure out your emotions and not be a crazy person. So, there's that balancing act. And I think that is part of the glue that keeps relationships going, because I think guys don't tend to see as many of the problems as women do. It's kind of how our brains are designed. And so women are more likely to bring up a problem or be frustrated about something first. And the guys are just like, what's happening?
Right, very true.
It's tough, yeah.
Well, with conflict in couples, they kind of have to find a balance that works for both of them, and taking time away, one person might need more time than the other, and you have to find that balance. If someone is trying to kind of pursue the conversation and the other person needs time, then it usually erupts into a bigger conflict.
Right.
So it sounds like you guys were able to find that balance point for both of you.
It took a
We
while.
did.
It does take a while.
Not that it's perfect all the time, but yeah, we
Sure.
Marriage isn't perfect.
No.
If anybody walks into marriage thinking that it's going to be, they're going to be quickly deceived.
Right.
Yeah, it's a hard work.
So you guys get married and have a baby within 2 years?
Oh, it was less.
First anniversage, she was
1
with
year.
us.
Wow.
Yeah, the people at work were counting.
Everybody was
When
doing
did
the
you get
math.
married?
What month did you get married, and when is she due? But it was shortly after, we got married, and then, as I say, 4 years later, we were fortunate enough to save enough to move to Mount Prospect, and then Millie's mom and dad moved in with us within a couple of months after we bought the house.
How was that for you guys?
It was good.
It was stressful.
Stressful, but good. The end result was good. And Megan, our daughter, could see how important it was for us to take care of her parents and how much Millie loved my parents. One of my favorite stories, if I can, move over to that point, is when my mom, her health was declining and she couldn't go to Megan's 8th grade graduation ceremony. So Millie made sure that Megan went to the retirement home with her cap and gown so that Grandma could see Megan in her cap and gown and stuff like that. She loved my mom and dad, and Millie's parents were easy to love. And sure, it was not easy, but the outcome was great. It was great.
Right.
The reason that Mom and Dad ended up coming with us was because I always took care of my mom. She had schizoaffective disorder, and they lived in the city, and we were moving to Mount Prospect. And for me to be constantly going back and forth was going to be difficult, so we just decided to do this, but it was very stressful. I remember when I would come home from being out somewhere and I would turn onto my street, the tension across the back of my shoulders was horrendous. And Mom and Dad didn't always get along, so you feel like you're a ref, and then Mom gets sick and you got to do this, and then you feel like you have no time for your daughter who needs you. So it was very stressful, and then you have to make time for the husband, and so I was pretty stressed.
Were you a caretaker of your mom when you were a girl?
Yes.
So your whole life?
My whole life. Yeah, my whole life I did. It was the thing to do. It was a cultural thing. The boys didn't have to do any of the caregiving, and I would be playing with my friends, and my mom wanted to go somewhere, and my father would come out and say, okay, you got to take your mom to do such and such. And at the time, I regretted, or what's the word I want? Resented it. And I look back now, and I wish I would have been better about accepting those challenges, because Mom was really sick.
Yeah, but I think those are normal feelings.
Yeah.
Even though she needed it, doesn't mean
Just,
you wanted to stop playing with your friends.
well, now that they're gone, I just,
Well,
wish I had a do-over.
I think, and this is kind of why this is a very important topic, I think, is because a lot of people today are kind of going through this caregiver situation where they're taking care of their, an older generation, and then maybe also taking care of, their kids as well at the same time. And so they're kind of finding themselves in the middle, having to balance a lot of energy and time. And at the same time, their relationships takes a back burner because it has to, right? Because there are a lot of people that are depending on them. And I think you guys have actually that great example of that, because you were taking care of both, taking care of your daughter, taking care of, an older generation. At the same time, they're living with you, and so this is some really important, concepts here about how you guys handle that and how you dealt with that stress together, and what did you do together to try to mitigate that?
Yeah, it's I believe it's known as, or it was known as at the time I was doing some reading on it, the sandwich generation, where you're in the middle and the kids
Right.
are all that. Yeah, but
As far as the question about coping, I still wonder how we did cope. We just understood this is what we have to do. But you're right, our relationship was on the back burner, and we kind of realized that that's where it has to be at this point in time. So
Right.
Now, again, Millie's dad passed in January of 2018, and so Millie's so used to being a caregiver. That's just a big adjustment. All her life she was, and now Megan's in England with her husband. Her mom and dad are gone. My mom and dad are gone. So Millie's sorting out her who she is at this point in life.
and what do I want to do?
Yeah,
What do I
and we
wanna
went to
do?
a show the other day. We went to see Green Book, and the Tuesday afternoon, it's like, wow, this is amazing. The two of us are going to a show.
So it's
and-
time to focus on
Yeah,
us.
so it's all quite exciting.
Imagine it's like reinventing yourselves.
Yeah,
Honestly.
right.
Yeah.
We have this time now to enjoy each other, so it's a wonderful thing.
Was it a difficult decision for you to include her parents to live with you guys?
No, I loved them right from the get-go. Just good people, and not that there were days in the home that were difficult, for sure. And like Millie said, they'd argue from time to time, and he was very hard on her,
But he loved her.
but he loved her.
It was
But-
just their way.
Yes, but there were days when I was like, oh, why did we do this? But I mean, it all was
Yeah.
a wonderful thing. So.
I remember the day I asked him. I don't know if he was ready for the question. You can just see this look on his face, like, "Whoa, where did that come from?" Yeah,
The question of whether
they would come
would
to
come,
live with
yeah.
us, and my mom got ready. She sold all the furniture. She was ready to move in the day we moved in, and I remember saying, "Mom, could you just wait just 1 week and just allow us some time alone in the house?" And she was not having any of it. She got so mad at me. And I said, okay, never mind what I said.
We had the house for weeks. It's like, okay, well, I mean, this is a little abrupt, but
So
again,
she expected it, and you didn't really know that was happening.
no. I think I'm hearing this for the first time, but that's okay.
That's happens on the podcast.
there is a term called caregiver fatigue. Have you guys ever heard of that term?
No, but I had it.
No, you had it.
I know I had it.
Okay, I was just going to ask.
Yeah,
Is
we-
that something you guys experience?
Oh, for her certainly, and we never identified it as such.
Uh-huh.
But, oh, for sure, Millie would just be totally
You
drained.
don't know what you're running
Totally
on. Right.
drained,
You don't know.
and then feeling guilty. Like occasionally, she would explode on her mom or dad for something, and then just feel awful. But it was kind of justified. But then you feel even worse. Oh, I was
Right, 'cause then you
tired. I
feel
lost my
guilty.
temper. Right.
Sure. Yeah. Did you guys want to talk about some of the kind of struggles that you guys encountered, the two of you, kind of dealing with some of Megan's challenges?
Her challenges with the relationship, the dynamics of our house, or her illness.
Her illness specifically, but how the two of you handled that together.
We had a tremendous support group as far as our parents go, and our church, and our family, our extended family. So he was working at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and his brothers, of course, were in the business with him, and they allowed him as much time as he needed to be with me. I never left the hospital. I was with her. She was very afraid that something
how
would
old
hap-
was she?
She was only 10 years old. So she was just afraid that if I left, something terrible was going to happen to her. So I didn't get too much of a chance to leave. And my parents wanted to see me because they were worried about me. So I just I think I took a weekend, and I went home for the weekend to see my folks, to let them know what was going on and that we were okay. But the family and the doctors over at Children's were wonderful. And there's always one doctor that gave you the absolute worst scenario. And then there was the oncologist who would come in and rub my back and tell me she's going to be okay. And my mother-in-law always used to say, well, if Millie's ever missing, we will know that she has run away with the oncologist, because that was my favorite guy.
Yeah.
But no, that we had a wonderful support, and I think we got through that with family, church, friends, prayers, and at one point I didn't even think that God was really with me. I remember going down to the chapel, and there was a book there, and people would sign the book. And I thought, well, I'll put something in the book. And I remember putting in there, God, where are you? Because I just felt so
Lost,
lost at the time, and I was angry. But then when you look back, and of course she's well, and you see that he was everywhere. And the person who, from St. Emily's, that's our parish in Mount Prospect, who came over and left food for Len to eat and for my parents, with the kids in school who raised money and sent cards and letters to keep us going while we were there, and they were so cute. We would sit up and read them all. But
You'd read them together?
Read them together, yeah. And they were just cute letters from the kids, how much they missed her and stuff. So it was wonderful. We couldn't have gotten through without faith, family, and friends, honestly.
And you do look upon these things as miracles and blessings in your life. Again, Megan had adult leukemia at the age of 10 and needed, besides chemotherapy, she needed a bone marrow transplant. But the lab at Children's Memorial was built less than 2 years before she needed that type of stem cell transplant. And I look at that as a miracle that the technology came along. I look at all the doctors and their education and their as people that God put in our path to make this all work out. And I'll leave it at that.
Did you guys ever have periods of time where you shared that those feelings of aloneness, or, kind of feeling lost together?
I don't think so. I think we kept it to ourselves, honey. What do you think?
No, I specifically thinking of when she was in the ICU, and she was in dire straits, and we looked at each other and held each other and cried together and got through with that, I think, in that way. Do you remember?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought I was by myself.
In what way did that experience enrich your lives and enrich your relationship with Megan?
Oh, I don't know where to begin with that, but it definitely enriched our relationship to each other and with our daughter. And we did witness two couples on the 5th floor oncology. In those days, Children's in Lincoln Park, not downtown today. But we saw two couples blaming each other for the cancer, saying, "Well, it's not in my genes; it's in your genes." And they relationships were severed over this type of So you either get closer or you draw away from each other. And we got closer, and as they say, anybody's love for their child is going to be terrific, and so ours is as well. And so I would think it's more or less terrific, but I mean, we just had this special experience with her and she with us. And
were there any really key moments where something happened and you just, like when she saw the park in the backyard kind of thing, where you can just so appreciate that after going through something like this?
Well, just going back to school and trying to deal with what she had to deal with. And then she had immunity issues, and Millie, God bless you, she's like, a lot of parents are saying, well, don't let her on the bus. She has a, poor immunity and stuff. And Millie's like, no, she has to get back in the game and get on that bus and, fight the good fight, continue her life.
That must have been really difficult.
Yeah.
So it's things like that.
Yeah.
And the kids would make fun of her at school because she had to wear the wig. You're dealing with that kind of
that age and
circumstance.
Yeah, sure.
And it was not pleasant. But overall, the school was wonderful. They even came over in the summer and got her all caught up because she got sick when she was in the 5th grade. And they all made sure that she could start with her classmates in the 6th grade. So they tutored her all summer, and she was able to do that. And it's again, that's just another blessing.
And it's a big part of the story. What a gift to give our daughter, that she would not be left behind, so to speak, but to be right up there with the kids that she knew, from kindergarten, and to be in the same class and not a year behind. So that was a tremendous gift from the teachers of St. Emily.
So, I mean, at the same time as, you guys are trying to help Megan kind of go through this challenge, you're also dealing with your parents as well, simultaneously, correct?
Right. Yes, we would call as much as we could to talk to Mom and Dad. And as I mentioned, I did go home one weekend. But Dad was pretty good. I think that because of the situation, I think he became a more understanding person with my mom, and they had to be there for each other as we were going through all of this. So it worked out. The only downside was that our dog at the time ended up over 100 pounds because my mom kept feeding it. But I think Mom and Dad, they rose to the occasion, and Mom was on a good, I think her need to take care of things kind of overrode her illness. She needed it was a mission for her to hang in there. So she was healthy the whole time, and she had bouts she had moments of when she would get sick and had to be hospitalized. But during that whole time, she was really healthy, and I think she was just given a purpose.
Wow, yeah.
So that was all good. So I stayed most of the time in the hospital. Len would come home and see them, and I think they were fine. So that part was good. That was a good question.
So things seemed to just kind of align
Yes.
perfectly.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
When we needed it.
When you needed it the
Yeah.
most, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that is very difficult to understand is when you haven't been through something. It's really hard to know how can you support people, or what are they actually going through that they need. What advice would you give to people who maybe know someone in a similar situation, how they could support that family?
Don't keep it quiet. Let it be known. And you'll be surprised, anybody would be surprised how many people have problems in their lives with a family member or themselves. And once you share, all of a sudden they feel open to share with you. And it's like, oh my gosh, all these people have all these issues, and I never realized it because nobody would talk about it. So I think that's one of the things that we learned, and the support we got.
Accept the help.
Yeah, accept the help, and don't refuse people's kindness and out of pride, or we don't need that type of help or whatever. But again, we talked about St. Emily, the teachers and the parish support. My cousins were just because it was Christmas time in '95. What they would have shared with each other is, and their kids for Christmas gifts, they gave it to me for medical bills. My accountant, because I had a business at the time, he did my returns for my company, and even though I'm self-employed, I'll say company. I'm proud. And he said, I'm not charging this year. Save the apply it towards your medical expenses for your daughter and stuff like that. So you had more people that were just, so compassionate. And Millie did touch about the notes and letters that we got from the kids at St. Emily. But it was Valentine's Day, and Megan was in the hospital, and some of the moms showed up with, was it 1 or 2 boxes, honey, decorated boxes? But it was at least one box wrapped, and inside the box or boxes was a Valentine from every kid in the school for Megan.
Wow.
Stuff like that just
That is
blows you
amazing.
away.
Kept us going.
It sounds like there's almost nothing you can do wrong. Like any way you could reach out is going to support the family in some way.
Right.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Wow.
And true.
So here's another question for you guys.
Okay.
How is your relationship similar or different from your parents' relationships?
Again, I think Millie's mom and dad, I'll speak for your mom and dad first, had some would argue more than my mom and dad, even though my mom and dad's relationship wasn't perfect. My mom was a saint, but my dad was a good person and a loving person. But yeah, my mom truly had to make concessions. And I don't know, Mel, did you and I have to make many concessions?
Oh, no, not at all. No, my mom and dad, I think, again, going back to the cultural thing, my father was very domineering, mom was very submissive, and we don't have that dynamic within our relationship. We never have. He's always let me be me and express my views, and he's never been not a tyrant. But somebody who bosses you around is the only word that comes to mind, because that's kind of what my dad did. I mean, he would even go with my mom into the voting booth and say, you have to vote this way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was
Behind the curtain. Yeah, behind the curtain, which you're not supposed to
You're
do.
not supposed to do that, right? Wow. So your relationship is more equal.
it is more equal, much more equal than our parents, I think.
Was that something you specifically were looking for after witnessing your parents' relationship?
That's a good question. I don't know that I was looking for it specifically. No, I think I just wanted a good man, and I found that in Len, really. And then the fact that we were from a different generation brought those other things into play, that I was able to be myself. I think we've learned how to navigate our relationship from... I'm sorry, you were going to say.
No, again, as far as treating each other equal, I don't think that was, from the outset, was a goal. We were attracted to each other, and fell in love with each other. But I think the treating each other equal just kind of evolved. It wasn't part of the initial, goal that I had. I don't know about Millie, but
It's interesting because my parents, and
Yes.
my parents did definitely have that traditional. My dad was, the authority, and my mom listened, and I absolutely didn't want that.
Right.
And
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. And if you listen to my mom's podcast, she talks about that and how that's
No
changed for her in her
kidding.
life. Yeah. And again, I think it's generational. That was a very normal thing back then. And, in this idea of sharing stories and how we've evolved over the years is, we live in a very different world than our parents did or our grandparents, right? Very, very different.
Yeah.
But
Thank God.
no matter what generation, we can all grow and evolve. And I hope this comes off properly, but I remember your dad as being very gruff. And then he went through Christ Renews His Parish.
Yeah.
And I saw a change in that guy. I said, boy, he's so much gentler now. And so it just was interesting to observe. So that's all.
It really was a huge transformation, which, I think is in our lives, that's what we help people do, is transform their lives, right? And so many people really never kind of get there. And it was a really big transformation that he went through, especially, I remember when my mom went through CHIRP, and he was very angry about it for years. Like,
Really?
You're spending all your time talking to those people, and my dinner's not on the table, And then I remember him telling a story about, he goes, there's like, all these people are hugging and stay away from me. And then he would be the first guy at the door to hug everybody on the way in once he made that transformation.
Transition, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
And
You
he
could see
did
it.
have a lot more peace.
It was
Yeah.
observable.
Yeah.
It was great to
Yep.
see.
Very
Well,
cool.
the goal of every generation is to become better than the past, better than the last, right? That's part of evolution. And, that transformation, what you're talking about is, he evolved beyond the authoritarian type of parenting that he grew up with, right? And, what you guys are talking about is having an egalitarian one, an equal relationship, which is something that, your parents, Millie, did not have,
No.
right? And so you
No, they
guys
did not.
evolved. And I imagine this type of structure you guys had, this egalitarian structure, helped you tremendously in going through a lot of the stressors and challenges that the two of you have
That we
gone
faced.
through in your marriage, right? Because,
That's a good point.
I mean, if it was authoritarian, then one person really dictate how things are going and might create more resentment on the other side. But because you guys were able to have more of an equal relationship and balance things out, you were able to kind of balance the load, I would imagine.
That's a very good point.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Right.
And having said that, one of the things about my being controlling is always with regard to finances, and I realized that I'm older than Millie, and that I'll probably step out of the picture before she does. And Millie used to say, you know what, you do all this stuff, I'm in the dark as far as our finances and what's what. So that's been a goal the last few years, is to try to have Millie be our financial planner. And it's just something that I had a difficult time letting go. But it's something that,
well, that's
has
your
to be
thing,
done.
right?
Yes, that has to be done,
Right.
though. Right.
That was his gift. We all have gifts,
Sure.
and we do the best gift that we have within our marriage. And now he's wanting to share that with me, and that's great, because I really am in the dark about those things, and it's good for all of us to know what's going on.
That
in
was
the
a really
house.
big transition for my mom when my dad passed.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Mm-hmm.
So I know you guys have a really strong faith life.
Yes.
How has that impacted your guys' relationship?
Greatly. And ever since the very beginning, before we really knew each other very well, but we were, I even said that we were married, but we were just learning about each other. But her faith and her values, and the way she loved my mom and dad, and hopefully I
Likewise.
felt the same with
Yes.
your mom and dad, and
Yeah.
she loved my brothers, and it just, the faith part of it, and what we're supposed to be doing with each other, and treating each other's families, and overlooking things you might complain about, and just loving, that's part of the faith that hopefully we inherited from our parents and share with other people.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, that's beautifully said, Leonard.
I also said I was 87 at the beginning of the show. I was 67, folks.
So I just heard this thing about, people try to get what they can get, but it's actually in becoming what you can to help others that makes our lives fulfilling. And that's what it sounds like. Your whole family, extended family, your village is all about that.
Our village.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes,
Mhm.
thank you. Hmm.
Yeah.
At first, it's work. It seems like, but once you get to know your brother's spouses and who everybody is, and then all of a sudden, nothing matters after that. Nothing matters.
Did you go through any sort of faith crisis while you were going through these challenges?
I'm happy to say that while I prayed very fervently and everything, I never really had a faith challenge.
Mhm.
I never did. I remember my Aunt Mary, because Megan was in intensive care on Christmas Eve, and she said, just say a rosary at midnight, which I did, and just scared out of my mind and everything. But it wasn't a faith crisis. It was like, embrace my faith. Let's, I'm scared here.
Yeah.
So,
I was angry.
Yeah.
I was very angry.
Mhm.
Understandably.
And never in my
Yeah.
life did I think that we would be struck with something like that. But again, we just get through it with your faith, your family, and your friends. And the church is like another family to us.
Mhm.
So they're there for us. People that you normally didn't talk to would always come up and say, "How you doing?" and "What can I do for you?" They were just coming out of the woodwork. It's a beautiful thing to see when you're in crisis, that the world is made up of a lot of really decent people.
It really is.
Really.
I want to talk about the faith thing, just
Sure.
take it a little bit further, in that, needless to say, in those dark, difficult days, Millie and I were scared out of our minds and everything, and tried to embrace and hold on to our faith. But Megan exhibited a faith stronger than ours. I mean, I think that helped her survive.
Mhm.
So,
There's a book called The Tunnel in the Light by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's the one that's credited with the 5 stages of grief, which is a small part of what you learn when you go through psychology training. But her life's work was helping children die. And she would talk about that. She would say, when we have these 4 quadrants in our lives, our physical, our emotional, our mental, and our spiritual. And when we have a deficit in one, we have a gift in another. And so,
Interesting.
and she talks about just lots of examples of that, and it's usually the children that are ready and the parents that are having a more difficult time. And it's a really beautiful book.
Oh, that sounds-
Yeah.
thank you.
It's so easy to, be Jesus in a room by yourself. So much more difficult when you're in a relationship, right? To maintain those things. I know that's something that we work on. A lot of people that want to teach in the world are single people. Not they may be married, but they're doing it by themselves. And we have a big challenge trying to do it together. We have to overcome those things and overcome those things publicly. So what is that like for you guys when you're in conflict and you're not acting so Christ-like and you have to find your way back to center?
I think we just give it time, and then we've been fortunate in that over an hour or a day or whatever, it seems less important. Whatever it was that I was or Millie was so upset about, and
You forget about it.
You forget about it. And
It's really-
your love overcomes the anger.
What does that say? It wasn't worth the argument.
Even though you oftentimes feel that you should have the last word because you're right. It's not worth it. It's not worth
No,
it.
it's better to be kind than to be right.
So put that duct tape on your mouth and just keep.
So what is the best part about being empty nesters and the worst part?
Oh, the worst part is no phones ringing, and Millie, again, I think despite the difficulties, always loved to be a caregiver. She's a loving, giving person, and that's been taken away from her. So I think that's the downside of being empty nesters. The upside is now we can travel and see our daughter in
Right.
England, and go on a few vacations. She has cousins in Texas and Florida, and
We'll be spontaneous. We can do whatever we want. We've never had that.
yeah, we're still sorting that out, and but it's that part is exciting.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're retired also.
I am.
A retired caregiver.
I
right?
am. I am.
What's
Miss
the
'em.
What's the best part?
Just the anticipation of travel and having more time. As I mentioned earlier, went to a movie. I don't know, Millie.
No
When's the last time we
schedule.
went to a movie together, other than last Tuesday? It's
Yeah.
been,
It's
forever,
nice not
forever
having
and
a
a day.
schedule.
So that is very nice. It is.
I'm
very
still
nice.
trying to find out what I want to do. I haven't really decided what I want to do with the rest of my life, as far as getting out there and helping and volunteering and that kind of thing. So people are telling me I just need to take time and just figure that out. So I'm trying to do that.
Do you guys have a common vision for the future?
I don't think we've discussed it.
Other than staying in Mount Prospect, which is not his
I
favorite
used to fight
thing.
battles over that. Let's go to a warmer climate, and and Millie's like, "What? Your family's here, your friends are here, your parish is here. Why would you want to go anywhere?" So I have
That's what
since
your dad used to say,
yeah,
Gene.
yeah. But I've bought into that now, and that's so we no longer argue about that. But yeah,
You can always visit a warmer climate, right?
correct. Yes,
That's the
we
perfect
can.
solution.
Sure.
That's the perfect solution.
One
yes.
of the things that we teach couples a lot is, new experiences are just so important to have, because the way our brains work is the neurons that fire together wire together. And when you're having new experiences, then you're interacting different and you're growing and becoming. And it makes for a much more enjoyable life. And, this idea of I don't know what I want, it's absolutely trial and error. And, just go
Yeah.
take a class in anything. Whether you hate it or not,
Yeah.
it's going to be useful in your life.
It's going to be an
Yeah.
exposure that I maybe didn't have before.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
And that dovetails into quality time, right? And one thing that we explore with couples is how much quality time do they have together. And quality time is defined as one-on-one interaction without anyone else and without any screens. So not like watching a movie or watching TV, but that personal one-on-one interaction. And I imagine that during the time when you were being a caregiver, there was a lot less quality time, understandably, right? Because you guys were kind of juggling all these balls in the air. And then now you've shifted into this place in your life where there's a lot more quality time,
There is.
right? And the research says that couples should be spending a minimum of 5.5 hours of quality time together per week. I imagine you guys are spending a lot more now.
Yes, we are.
How has that transition been for you? Because a lot of couples that that get retired, now they're finding themselves having a lot more quality time with their spouse, but they're not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think we have to give it more time. It's pretty fresh. So right now and it's winter. So I think that once the weather changes and maybe he gets done with all his organizing that he wants to do, the quality time will come in. I think we want to do biking. We want to do excursions to places. We just went to Rome last year, which was his dream to take me to Rome, and it was beautiful. We had a wonderful time, and then we fit in a trip to London to visit our daughter. So I think as we move along, I think we'll be making more time together. It's just so new.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate the question, and I think we still have to go out of our way to make sure that, okay, one night a week we're going to go to a restaurant and sit across from each other and have dinner and converse and make those types of opportunities for each other.
Yeah, we do.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
So last question.
Okay.
What is it that your partner does that you know they love you?
Wow. Good question. He does so much.
And so do you. So I'm trying to. There's so many things that I'm having difficulty picking out one, but I just innately know her little expressions just convey to me that she loves me very much.
Yeah, your actions, just the things you do for each other. He's really good when he was working to always call me every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on my way home or I'm at lunch. How are you? How's your day going? He gets up in the morning. Now this is new. He comes downstairs when he gets up and he hugs and kisses me, then goes upstairs to get ready for his day. And we always tell each other we love each other before we go to bed, and it's always been.
So I hope this helps to answer your question, but I'm not talking about in the here and now, but I'm talking about back in the, I never had a garage kept car until I was in my 40s. So my car was always in the driveway because Millie's car was in the garage and her dad's car was in the garage. And I used, as I already mentioned, work downtown, but I would come downstairs and the coffee's made. The car in the winter was scraped and running and warming. The defroster was on because I think Millie felt bad that her dad's car's in the garage and my car's out in the driveway and you've got to go to work. So that was always taken care of for me. It's things like that. It's things like that.
Was that even during silent treatment time?
Maybe not.
Oh, but you got your dinner still.
Yeah, right.
Silent
right.
treatment was silent treatment.
We have this thing.
No
like,
warming up the car.
When we're like that, we have to give each other the coffee, or I'm not. You can't be rude, right? You got to still reach out, even though you really don't want to. That's a hard thing to do in a relationship.
But that story popped into my head when you thought of, when you said give examples. That was a great example for me. I used to love it coming downstairs and
That's awesome.
Yeah, ready to hop on the train with the car warmed up and everything.
I was his automatic start.
I actually do have one more question.
Okay.
What is your favorite thing that your partner's ever said to you?
I love you, Leonard Lewis.
Oh yeah, I do call him Leonard Lewis. I don't know, for you.
Haven't I ever said anything?
I used to like when you called me Bright Eyes.
Oh,
You don't call
okay.
me Bright Eyes anymore because I'm old.
Okay, I'm going to have to start again.
Let's restart that again.
Yeah, right? So it's a restart, right? Mm-hmm.
I don't know. He just makes me laugh a lot.
We do have
I
fun.
really do think that is really important in a relationship when we can laugh at each other and with each other. And we do. We laugh a lot. So that's good.
Yeah, which is a sign of a great love and a great relationship. On the crass side, it's also a coping strategy. And Megan had, a psychologist back in the day and they said that your parents, that part of their coping strategy is just to not make light of the situation, but just try to laugh their way through it. So I think it's important. I do think it helps build a marriage or relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, humor is very important in
Yes.
a relationship. Yeah.
It also boosts our immune system.
Right.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that. The temperament
Yep.
can either build up your immune system or break it down.
Yeah, when we're angry, we produce less SIGA, which is the hormone that strengthens our immune system. And when we go through a process of forgiveness, we get an extra boost of it. And when we're good and laughing, it's really healthy for us. Yeah, absolutely. Good
Well,
job, you guys.
She keeps me healthy.
I set him up for all his jokes.
Maybe you guys will have a comedy routine as a
Here we go. Here we go.
second career,
So
right?
Thanks for helping us figure out our second career.
There you go,
Nice.
right? Well, Len and Millie, we want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you both for
Thank
this
you for
opportunity.
having us.
Yes.
You know, human beings have been sharing their stories since the beginning of time to help us bond and heal. And we hope that you guys sharing your story has enriched your lives and the lives of our listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For all you listening, if you have any questions or topic suggestions, again, please feel free to leave a comment or look us up online at couplessynergy.com. Until next time, synergize your life, synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.